Hello, everyone. This is Andreas Pop Culture Guide. Today is another latest Andreas Pop Culture retrospective review, and it's on Man of Steel, the 2013 film directed by Zack Snyder, starring Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Michael Shannon, Kevin Costner, and Russell Crowe. Now, this year is the 10th anniversary for Man of Steel. Now, this movie was conceived as a new introduction to the Superman mythology or film, working from the ground up and kick-started a cinematic universe that has become known as the DC Extended Universe for this moment until another extended reboot that's coming out with James Gunn's Superman reboot, Superman Legacy, which we'll see soon in 2025 if the right strikes pan out right. Anyway, now it's been a decade on. Man of Steel is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. It's 2013, so it's been 10 years since. It's crazy. Not only did Man of Steel help take the Superman film series beyond the Reeve era, of course, the Christopher Reeve era, but with the aggressive and dark approach to the icon superior, it's also welcoming a whole new bunch of fans in the process as well. These fans turned out to see what Superman was all about, then hang around when they fell in love with the character for the last 85 years at this point, which is also a big milestone this year. It's the 85th anniversary of Superman. Now, all these years on, it's a decent solo film that changed the percentage of who is Superman and his universe stand for, but making missteps that follow Man of Steel to divide the territory with its ham-fisted try to build a ill-considered cinematic universe over the last 10 years. Out of this film, this initial picture remains controversial after 10 years. From the set design and costuming through to the sound mixing and the casting of the legendary characters, Man of Steel does deliver across the board, but overall for me, it doesn't get everything right as a Superman film. And the film becomes too crashy and bashy towards the end of the climax. But at the same time, credit is due to Man of Steel. Does do impressive stuff that I like and is thoroughly entertaining with its characters and actors, we will get to towards the end. I have several complaints about the film, but that doesn't work. It keeps the film becoming a good Superman circle, as reflecting the messy complexity towards the end of the climax, which we'll get to. Now, right from is the evolving perspective and approach to the ground the film in a naturalistic version of it, what it looks like when a new god arrives in the modern world, is not well done in this film. The same natural reflection of transposing sci-fi superheroes onto our 21st century society also makes it easier to appreciate that yet. But most of Clark's time knowing his secret is what could probably happen easily, but I wasn't really questioning that. Okay. That grounded the reason and more somber considered the approach in Man of Steel was a strong contrast to the Marvel approach with their own films, to help distinct the DCEU from the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, from the stories and score to the tone and sensibilities, from the naturalistic performance to the demonstration of superhuman powers from pretty much the Kryptonians, Man of Steel does commit to that fundamental realism stands out in the early DCEU films, starting the space between the Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy vision and Snyder's vision of dark realism. In that way, is a particularly unique in the DCEU and the Snyder's supposed trilogy, but at the same time, for me, it doesn't land too well in the Superman film. My other complaints arose first and foremost from the unfamiliarity with those storytelling choices of mixing up the Superman origin story into non-linear way, sort of like Batman Begins. Because they are trying to how themes have been presented previously. His parents, the loss of his father, his life in Smallville, how he kept a secret. These were always traditional three-act structure, similar to how the 78 film did it, or the Superman the Animation series did. But they switch it up and make it in a non-linear way, like, as I previously said, for Batman Begins. These are important financial aspects of the character, and so much of that's what backstory is seen from a new perspective. These the deconstructing of the origins and the common awareness of those events and themes in Clark's life is a little missing. If that is pretty clear from the start, Matthew is more interesting in a god myth Superman than the human side of the story, which is a problem. And that's why I cannot crowd choice to Clark as a character. Phil spends like first, I mean, Phil spends like almost like 40 or 20 minutes on Krypton before we even meet Clark as an adult, which is a problem. These flashbacks to this childhood is very pointless. It doesn't add to Clark's development in the film, and really, Clark doesn't really have a huge development arc besides learning that he cannot kill, just like Batman. But we'll get to that. But the only serve to is like the ways in which he's different. Destined for something greater, it's more or less keeps his Kryptonian origin story intact with the bizarre decision that he somehow carries the genetic codes of the entire Kryptonian race inside him. Very, how do you say, trying to switch the MacGuffin, but it's still a old tired trope of the MacGuffin search. But drastically changing his human race or ability. At the same time, for the Man of Steel, over last 10 years, I will say that it does have a lot going for it compared to the last Superman film, Superman Returns. With Man of Steel having enormous elements of the film continue to hold up years after its release. First hitting the years on June 14, 2015, despite Man of Steel could become one of the most fully debated superheroes ever made. Man of Steel does continue to be a major line of the DC entire film legacy, to the point even be a major function in the upcoming Flash film when I saw last Friday. 10 years later, Man of Steel has aged very well, which I will agree. But many of the film's core elements still having so much impact as did upon the movie's original release for so many people. To wrap up this, review, the commitment to realism also translates into some of the best action sequences and sci-fi moments. I think the terraforming sequence is probably the best in the film. So at the end, of course, Superman's fight towards the end, it's really spectacular. It definitely rivals Superman 2's action. And for me, Superman falls into the mountain is really striking. And I think Zack Snyder and the cinematographer did a good job of showing Superman's leap to his first flight, which is really spectacular. And the score from Hans Zimmer is really delightful. I think it's underrated, and I wish we still continue with this version in the DCEU. But still, it doesn't beat the dominating score from Superman the movie or the refilms. Now, as we see the immense destruction in the final act, it causes when he crashes the street, the pavement buckles and crumbles. When he fights, the building tumbles down in a very realistic way, and it's very good. Special effects here are really outstanding. Now, what also works, I think, for some people is the resonance with the themes of xenophobic militarism, faith, and colonialism, all of empires. I think really works well for Man of Steel in terms of thematic crutch during the Kryptonian discussion with General Zod and Jor-El. Now, overall, Man of Steel brought Superman into the modern world, as if the modern humanity has lost sight of what gives us hope, inspiration. Either we turn our backs on the success of great power and immense good. Now, for me, I think it does address those things, but not in a very thoughtful and intellectual way. For me, it does almost too much. And for me, I think Man of Steel is a little overbaked and it's not developing forward on its sci-fi concept. It's sort of like Elysium. Elysium was a great sci-fi film, had great ideas, but it didn't explore enough, right? And it got, of course, it focused on other things that was less important and was less interesting. And that is the whole problem of Steel for me. But for the last 10 years, I think it made me think that Man of Steel does offer a lot of good debates and good critical thinking over the last 10 years. I do highly recommend it, but I do warn you guys to keep a very cautious expectation of who is Superman is. Man of Steel offers something new and totally different perspective of who Superman is for everyone. But anyway, happy 10th anniversary, Man of Steel.